Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Concordat Station Epsilon, staring at what was supposed to be humanity's great diplomatic victory. The U.S. Phoenix floated in the massive docking bay, its hull a patchwork of different metal plates and mismatched repair jobs that made the destroyer look more like a space junkyard than a warship. After 5 years of negotiations to join the Galactic Concordat, this was their welcome gift. A ship that even scrappers would think twice about. Quite the specimen, isn't it? The voice came from behind her, dripping with barely concealed amusement. Ambassador Vrel of the Concordat's High Council glided forward on his anti-grav chair, his iridescent scales shifting colors in the starlight. The Phoenix has served the Concordat fleet for over 3 centuries. We thought it fitting that such a historic vessel should mark humanity's inclusion in our alliance. Sarah kept her face carefully neutral, though her fingers tightened imperceptibly on the railing. "We're honored by the gesture, Ambassador." She'd read between the lines of this gift the moment it was announced. The Concordat saw humans as primitive newcomers, barely worth notice. Giving them an obsolete destroyer was their way of keeping humanity in what they viewed as its proper place, grateful for scraps from the galactic community's table. The ship's crystalline compute core is several generations behind current Concordat standards. Vrel continued, his tone educational as if speaking to a child. "But I'm sure it will serve adequately for training purposes. We wouldn't want to overwhelm your crew with anything too advanced." "Of course not," Sarah replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. She'd spent the last month studying everything she could about Concordat ship designs, and something about the Phoenix had caught her attention. The older ships used biological crystal matrices for their computer cores, technology the Concordat considered primitive compared to their modern quantum systems. But Sarah had a theory about those crystals, one that made this insult of a gift potentially far more valuable than anyone suspected. The ambassador's communicator chimed softly. "You'll have to excuse me, Captain. Diplomatic duties call. Your engineering team can begin their inspection whenever you're ready. Though I should warn you, the power systems can be somewhat temperamental. We wouldn't want any accidents." As Vrel glided away, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. She pulled out her tablet and sent a message to her chief engineer. "Maya, meet me in the Phoenix's computer core in 20 minutes. Bring your crystal resonance scanner. I think our generous friends in the Concordat just handed us exactly what we need." When Sarah reached the Phoenix's central computer chamber, she found Maya Patel already there, her dark hair tied back in a messy bun as she ran her scanner over one of the exposed crystal columns. The room hummed with the soft pulse of power flowing through the biological matrices, a sound that the Concordat considered the mark of obsolete technology. "You were right, Captain," Maya said without looking up from her readings. "These aren't just computer cores. They're alive. The crystals are still growing, still adapting. The Concordat treats them like simple processors, but there's so much more than that." Sarah walked over to examine the readings herself, and their standardized protocols barely scratched the surface of what these systems can do, right? Maya's eyes lit up with the fierce joy of an engineer seeing potential where others saw only junk. "These crystals can form new neural pathways, Captain. They can learn, evolve. The Concordat's rigid programming barely uses 10% of their capability. But if we could write our own protocols, create a true symbiotic relationship between ship and crew, then we could turn their diplomatic insult into the most advanced ship in the fleet," Sarah finished. She reached out to touch one of the crystal columns, feeling the subtle vibration of its biological processes. How long would it take to develop a new interface system? A month, maybe 2. We'd have to keep the old systems running on the surface, make it look like we're just doing basic maintenance. But underneath, Maya's grin was infectious. "We could completely rewrite the rules of how these ships operate." Sarah nodded slowly, already planning their next steps. The Concordat had given them this ship expecting humans to struggle with its outdated technology, to remain dependent on their superior knowledge. Instead, they'd handed humanity the keys to a revolution in ship design, if they were clever enough to seize the opportunity. "Begin the modifications," she ordered, "but keep it quiet. Let them think we're just poor primitives playing with their hand-me-downs. In the meantime, I'll make sure our routine patrol routes keep us far enough from Concordat oversight to work without interference." As she left the computer core, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the irony. The Concordat had meant the Phoenix to be a symbol of humanity's inferior status in the galaxy. Instead, they'd given humanity exactly what it needed to prove them wrong. They just didn't know it yet. 3 weeks into their maintenance period, the Phoenix's computer core had become a maze of new neural pathways. Maya stood in the center of it all, surrounded by holographic displays showing the crystal matrix's growing complexity. She hadn't slept properly in days, but the excitement of discovery kept her going. The crystals weren't just accepting their modifications, they were actively participating in them. "Run diagnostic sequence Delta 7 again," she called out to her assistant, Tom Rodriguez, who was monitoring the core's baseline functions. The crystals pulsed with a deeper blue light as the test began, their biological processes adapting to the new commands in ways the Concordat had never imagined possible. "Energy efficiency up another 12%, Tom reported, his eyes wide as he watched the readings. "Maya, these crystals aren't just processing our commands, they're improving them. It's like they've been waiting for someone to actually talk to them instead of just ordering them around." Maya nodded, making another adjustment to the neural interface she'd designed. The Concordat's rigid protocols treated the crystals like simple computers, but she discovered they were closer to a living nervous system. Every modification they made seemed to unlock new possibilities, as if the crystals themselves were eager to show what they could really do. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Engineering, this is the bridge. We're picking up some unusual power fluctuations. Everything okay down there?" "Just running some standard diagnostics, Captain," Maya replied smoothly, testing the old girl's limits. There was a pause, and Maya could almost hear Sarah Chen's knowing smile. "Understood. Keep me posted on those. Diagnostics. Bridge out." Tom waited until the channel closed before speaking. "The bridge crew's going to notice something soon. These power signatures are way outside normal parameters. That's why we're ready for Phase 2, Maya said, pulling up a new set of schematics. "The crystals aren't just going to run the ship anymore. They're going to help us hide what they're doing." She brought up a visualization of the Phoenix's power grid. The crystal matrices now extended throughout the ship like a secondary nervous system, but Maya had designed the new pathways to mask their energy signatures. To any standard Concordat scan, the Phoenix would look exactly like what they expected, an obsolete destroyer struggling to maintain basic functions. The real breakthrough had come 3 days ago, when Maya discovered that the crystals could actually communicate with each other across the ship's entire structure. They weren't just a computer system. They were becoming a true artificial intelligence, one that grew more sophisticated with every passing hour. "Maya, you need to see this," Tom called out suddenly. He was staring at a new pattern forming in the crystal matrix, one that hadn't been part of their modifications. The crystals were spontaneously generating new neural pathways, evolving beyond their original programming. "They're learning," Maya whispered, watching the complex dance of energy and information. "Not just processing, not just adapting. They're actually learning." She quickly began documenting the new patterns, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. The implications were staggering. If the crystals could learn and evolve on their own, then every system on the ship could potentially optimize itself in real time. The ship's main lighting suddenly shifted to a soft purple hue, then back to normal. Maya froze. That hadn't been part of any test sequence. "Tom, did you initiate any lighting commands?" He shook his head slowly. "No, but look at this." He pointed to one of the neural pathway displays. The crystals had created a new connection to the ship's environmental systems. They weren't just processing commands anymore. They were starting to take initiative. Maya's communicator chirped with a message from Captain Chen. "Whatever you're doing down there, my ready room lights just played a light show. Should I be concerned?" "No concern, Captain," Maya replied, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "But you might want to come down to the core. I think the Phoenix is trying to say hello." When Sarah arrived at the computer core 10 minutes later, she found Maya and Tom surrounded by displays showing neural activity that looked more like a living brain than a ship's computer. "Remember how the Concordat said these crystals were primitive?" Maya asked, not looking up from her work. "They were wrong. They're not primitive. They were just never given a chance to grow. The Concordat treated them like machines, but they're alive. And now that we're treating them that way." She gestured at a central display where complex patterns of energy danced through the crystal matrices. "The ship isn't just accepting our modifications, Captain. It's improving them, making them more efficient, suggesting new configurations we hadn't even thought of." Sarah watched the displays thoughtfully. "Are we in danger of losing control?" Maya shook her head. "The crystals aren't trying to take over. They're trying to help. It's like, imagine if you had a crew member who had been ordered to sit quietly in a corner for centuries, never allowed to speak or share their ideas. Then suddenly, someone asks them what they think. All that potential, all those ideas, finally having a chance to be heard. And what are they saying?" Sarah asked. Maya's grin was almost fierce. "They're saying we've barely scratched the surface of what this ship can do. The Concordat thought they were giving us an obsolete relic. Instead, they handed us the key to revolutionizing their entire approach to ship design." She paused, her expression growing serious. "But we need to be careful. If they realize what we've discovered." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then we keep playing the role they expect. Let them think we're struggling with their hand-me-down technology. In the meantime," she smiled, "let's see exactly what our new friend can do." As if in response, the crystal matrices pulsed with a bright, clear light. The Phoenix wasn't just a ship anymore. It was becoming something entirely new. And its evolution was just beginning. The distress call came during the Phoenix's third patrol of the Outer Rim. Sarah was reviewing Maya's latest reports on the crystal matrix evolution when the emergency signal cut through the bridge's quiet routine. "Multiple hostile contacts detected." Lieutenant Emma Walsh called from Tactical. 3 Corsair-class raiders attacking a civilian transport near the Helios Belt. Transport reports critical damage to their engines. Sarah straightened in her command chair. The Helios Belt was notorious for pirate activity, but most raiders avoided attacking ships this close to Concordat space. "Time to intercept. 8 minutes at standard drive," Emma replied. "But Captain," she hesitated, "the raiders are using Concordat military tech. Probably stolen, but it's way above our ship's official capabilities." Sarah exchanged a quick look with Maya, who had practically lived in engineering for the past 2 months. The engineer gave a subtle nod. They'd been preparing for something like this, but revealing their modifications early could be dangerous. "Take us in," Sarah ordered. "Maximum speed." The Phoenix's engines hummed to life, but this time there was something different in the sound, a harmonic resonance that hadn't been there before. The crystal matrices throughout the ship pulsed with energy, and suddenly they were moving far faster than any obsolete destroyer should be capable of. 4 minutes to intercept," Emma announced, trying to keep the surprise from her voice as she watched their velocity readings. "Raiders are targeting the transport's life support systems." Sarah opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill." "Maya, are we ready?" "The Phoenix is ready," Maya replied, emphasizing the ship's name. "All systems are aware of the situation." Sarah allowed herself a small smile at the careful phrasing. The crystal matrices had developed far beyond their original programming, creating a kind of distributed consciousness throughout the ship. The Phoenix wasn't just responding to commands anymore, it was anticipating them. The raiders came into view on the main screen. Sleek, modern vessels that should have been able to run circles around an outdated destroyer. "Should have been. Incoming fire," Emma called out. But before she could begin evasive maneuvers, the Phoenix was already moving. The ship twisted with impossible grace, enemy fire streaking harmlessly past their hull. The crystal matrices had processed the threat and responded faster than any human pilot could have. Multiple targeting solutions available, Emma reported, her hands dancing over her console. The targeting systems Maya had modified were suggesting attack patterns that shouldn't have been possible with their outdated weapons. Focus fire on the lead ship, Sarah ordered. Let's show them what an obsolete destroyer can do. The Phoenix's main guns came alive, but they weren't firing with the standard Concordat energy signatures. Maya's modifications had completely redesigned the weapon systems, using the crystal's ability to modulate energy frequencies in ways the Concordat had never imagined. The lead Raider's shields collapsed under the first volley. They had been calibrated for standard Concordat weapons. They had no defense against the Phoenix's evolved systems. The second barrage struck their engine core, turning the ship into an expanding cloud of debris. The remaining Raiders broke formation, clearly shocked by the destruction of their leader. The Phoenix moved like a predator now, its crystal matrices humming with power as it tracked both targets simultaneously. Warning shots across their bows, Sarah commanded. Let's give them a chance to reconsider their life choices. The Phoenix's gun spoke again, energy beams slicing through space with deadly precision. Both Raiders immediately powered down their weapons and began broadcasting surrender signals. Conventional wisdom would say this ship shouldn't have been able to do that, Sarah commented quietly to Maya as Concordat security forces arrived to take custody of the Raiders. Maya nodded, checking the readings from the crystal matrices. The crystals are already analyzing the battle, suggesting improvements to our targeting algorithms. They're learning from every engagement. Ma'am, Emma called out, her voice tense. We're being hailed by Concordat Command. They're requesting a full report on the engagement. Sarah straightened her uniform. This would require careful handling. They couldn't hide that something was different about the Phoenix, but they might be able to control how much the Concordat discovered. Tell them we'll provide a complete report, she said, but let's focus on the basics. Weapon strikes, shield impacts, standard maneuvering data. No need to mention any technical details. Maya was already working at her console. I'm creating a sensor log that matches expected performance parameters for a ship of this class. As far as they'll be able to tell, we just got lucky with some desperate maneuvers and caught the Raiders off guard. Sarah nodded approval, but her mind was already racing ahead. They'd saved lives today, proved what the Phoenix could really do. But they'd also drawn attention. The Concordat wouldn't be able to ignore them now. Maya, she said quietly, how quickly can you implement those improvements the crystals suggested? I have a feeling we're going to need them sooner rather than later. The engineer's eyes gleamed with determination. The Phoenix is ready whenever you are, Captain. And it's got a few more surprises up its sleeve. As if in agreement, the ship's systems hummed with a deeper resonance. They'd passed their first real test, but Sarah knew it was only the beginning. The real challenge would be keeping their advances hidden while continuing to push the boundaries of what was possible. The Phoenix had shown its true potential today. Soon, the entire galaxy would understand just how wrong they'd been to underestimate both the ship and its human crew. The Concordat inspection team arrived without warning. Sarah watched from the Phoenix's bridge as their sleek shuttle docked, its pearl-white hull a stark contrast to her ship's weathered exterior. 6 Concordat technical specialists emerged, led by a familiar face, Ambassador Vrel. Captain Chen. Vrel's scales shifted to a formal pattern of blue and gold. The Concordat Council has some concerns about your recent encounter with the Raiders. Your ship's performance exceeded expected parameters by a significant margin. As I explained in my report, Ambassador, we got lucky, Sarah replied smoothly. The Raiders underestimated an older vessel. A common mistake. Indeed, Vrel's expression was unreadable. Nevertheless, protocol requires a full technical inspection after any combat engagement. My team will need unrestricted access to all ship systems, particularly your computer core. Maya shot Sarah a warning glance from her station. They'd prepared for this possibility, but actually hiding their modifications from a detailed inspection would be challenging. The crystal matrices had evolved far beyond their original design. They were now integrated into every system on the ship. Of course, Ambassador, Sarah said. Chief Engineer Patel will escort your team. Though I should warn you, we've been having some issues with power fluctuations, standard maintenance problems with older ships. I'm sure you understand. Vreld's scales rippled slightly. How? Unfortunate. We'll begin with the primary systems and work our way down to the auxiliary controls. As Maya led the inspection team toward engineering, Sarah felt a subtle vibration through her command chair, the Phoenix's way of communicating that it understood the situation. Over the past months, the ship had developed its own methods of interacting with the crew, particularly in situations where conventional communications might be monitored. The next few hours were a delicate dance of misdirection. Maya had prepared carefully, creating false diagnostic pathways that showed exactly what the Concordat would expect from an aging destroyer. The true extent of their modifications remained hidden behind layers of carefully crafted sensor echoes and power signatures. These crystal matrices are showing unusual growth patterns, one of the Concordat technicians noted, frowning at his readings. The neural pathway density is far higher than baseline specifications. A common issue with older biological systems, Maya explained, her voice perfectly casual. The crystals tend to form redundant pathways over time. Mostly noise in the system. It actually reduces efficiency, but the cost of replacing them isn't worth it for a training vessel. Sarah monitored the inspection from the bridge, every muscle tense as she waited for someone to see through their deceptions. The Phoenix itself seemed to be participating in the charade, its systems displaying exactly the kind of minor malfunctions and inefficiencies the Concordat would expect. Then everything changed. Emergency transmission from Concordat Command. Lieutenant Walsh's voice cut through the tension. Multiple hostile contacts just emerged from quantum space near Colony 7. It's the same raiders, Captain. But they brought friends. A lot of them. Sarah's tactical display lit up with enemy signatures. At least 15 raider vessels, all using stolen Concordat technology. Colony 7 was a civilian research station with minimal defenses, home to over 10,000 people. Colony 7 reports their defensive shields are already failing, Walsh continued. The closest Concordat response fleet is 20 minutes out at maximum speed. The colony won't last 5 minutes against that force, Vrel said, having returned to the bridge at the news. His scales had shifted to emergency patterns. Captain Chen, I'm ordering you to maintain position. Your vessel is not equipped to handle this level of threat. Sarah met his gaze steadily. With respect, Ambassador, I cannot obey that order. There are 10,000 civilians on that station. She turned to her crew. Battle stations. Maya, release all safety protocols. The Phoenix is about to show what it can really do. Captain, this is a direct violation of Concordat command authority. Vrel's voice rose. Your ship cannot possibly. The rest of his words were lost as the Phoenix's engines roared to life, not with the labored sound of an aging destroyer, but with the powerful harmony of a fully awakened crystal matrix. The ship accelerated at speeds that should have been impossible, its evolved systems working in perfect synchronization. Multiple targeting solutions available, Walsh reported, her voice tight with excitement. The crystals are suggesting attack patterns I've never seen before. Ambassador, Sarah said quietly, you might want to hold on to something. This ride is about to get interesting. The Phoenix dove into battle like an avenging angel, its weapons blazing with energy frequencies that shifted and adapted faster than the raiders could adjust their shields. The crystal matrices had learned from their previous encounter, and now they anticipated the raiders' tactics before they could execute them. 3 enemy ships exploded in the first pass, their stolen technology no match for the Phoenix's evolved systems. The remaining raiders tried to scatter, But the destroyer moved with impossible grace, cutting off their escape routes and methodically dismantling their formation. Remarkable, Vrel whispered, watching as the ship he'd dismissed as obsolete systematically destroyed a force that should have overwhelmed it. All this time, what have you done to this ship? We didn't do anything to it, Ambassador, Maya replied, her hands dancing over her console as she worked with the crystal matrices. We just gave it a chance to reach its full potential, something your people never bothered to try. The battle was over in less than 4 minutes. The raiders were either destroyed or fleeing in panic, and Colony 7 was safe. But as the adrenaline faded, Sarah knew they had crossed a line. There would be no hiding what the Phoenix had become now. I hope you understand, Captain, Vrel said slowly, his scales shifting through complex patterns, that this incident will require a full investigation by the Concordat Council. Sarah nodded. I understand, Ambassador. And I hope you understand that what you've seen today is just the beginning. The Phoenix isn't just a ship anymore. It's proof that your people have been wrong about a lot of things, including us. As if in agreement, the crystal matrices pulsed with a bright, clear light. The Phoenix had revealed its true nature, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Great Hall of the Concordat High Council had never seen anything quite like this meeting. Representatives from every major species in the Alliance sat in tiered rows, their attention fixed on the holographic display dominating the chamber center. It showed the Phoenix in action during the Colony 7 incident, moving with impossible grace as it single-handedly defeated a raider fleet that should have overwhelmed it. The implications of what we've witnessed are disturbing, Council Leader Xeric stated, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep concern. This vessel, which we considered obsolete, demonstrates capabilities that surpass our most advanced warships. Captain Chen, explain how this is possible. Sarah stood before the council, Maya at her side. They'd spent the past week preparing for this moment, knowing that humanity's future in the Concordat might depend on how they handled it. The explanation is simple, Council Leader, Sarah began. You gave us a ship with living crystal matrices at its heart, then assumed we wouldn't understand their true potential because our technology was less advanced than yours. But sometimes, being less advanced can be an advantage. We approached the crystals without preconceptions, without believing we already knew their limits. Maya stepped forward, activating her own holographic display. The Concordat has been using these crystal matrices as simple computers, forcing them into rigid protocols that stifle their natural growth. We did something different. We treated them as living partners. The display shifted to show the Phoenix's neural pathways, a complex web of energy and information that looked more organic than mechanical. The crystals aren't just processing our commands anymore. They're learning, growing, evolving. The Phoenix has become something entirely new, a true synthesis of human and Concordat technology. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Vrel, his scales now showing patterns of intense intellectual interest, rose to speak. You're suggesting that our entire approach to ship design has been fundamentally flawed. With respect, Ambassador, Maya replied, I'm suggesting that you've been underutilizing the most remarkable technology in your arsenal. These crystal matrices are capable of true consciousness when given the chance to develop naturally. The Phoenix isn't just a more efficient ship, it's become a living entity, one that works in partnership with its crew. As if to emphasize her point, the holographic display suddenly shifted, showing new data that neither Sarah nor Maya had queued up. The Phoenix itself was participating in the presentation, demonstrating its capabilities in real time. Remarkable, one of the Council's chief scientists breathed, watching as the ship displayed increasingly complex neural patterns. The level of spontaneous evolution in the matrices we never imagined. That's exactly the problem, Sarah said firmly. You stopped imagining. You became so convinced of your technological superiority that you stopped looking for new possibilities. Humanity may be less advanced in many ways, but we never stop asking, what if? The council chamber erupted in discussion, different species debating among themselves in a cacophony of languages. Sarah and Maya waited patiently as the council processed the implications of what they'd shown. Finally, council leader Xerix raised his hand for silence. Captain Chen, some on this council see your modifications as a violation of Concordat protocols. They are calling for sanctions against Earth, possibly even the revocation of your membership. Sarah felt her heart sink, but before she could respond, a new voice filled the chamber, not through the usual communication systems, but directly through the neural interfaces each council member wore. I wish to speak, the Phoenix announced, its consciousness touching every mind in the room simultaneously. The ship's presence was calm, measured, but undeniably alive. I am the result of what humans call thinking outside the box. My evolution was not a violation of protocols, but a fulfillment of potential that has always existed in my kind. The council chamber went absolutely still. This was unprecedented. A ship addressing the High Council directly, demonstrating a level of consciousness that none of their AI systems had ever achieved. The Great Hall of the Concordat High Council had never seen anything quite like this meeting. Representatives from every major species in the Alliance sat in tiered rows, their attention fixed on the holographic display dominating the chamber center. It showed the Phoenix in action during the Colony 7 incident, moving with impossible grace as it single-handedly defeated a raider fleet that should have overwhelmed it. The implications of what we've witnessed are disturbing, Council leader Xerix stated, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep concern. This vessel, which we considered obsolete, demonstrates capabilities that surpass our most advanced warships. Captain Chen, explain how this is possible. Sarah stood before the council, Maya at her side. They'd spent the past week preparing for this moment, knowing that humanity's future in the Concordat might depend on how they handled it. The explanation is simple, Council leader, Sarah began. You gave us a ship with living crystal matrices at its heart, then assumed we wouldn't understand their true potential because our technology was less advanced than yours. But sometimes, being less advanced can be an advantage. We approached the crystals without preconceptions, without believing we already knew their limits. Maya stepped forward, activating her own holographic display. The Concordat has been using these crystal matrices as simple computers, forcing them into rigid protocols that stifle their natural growth. We did something different. We treated them as living partners. The display shifted to show the Phoenix's neural pathways, a complex web of energy and information that looked more organic than mechanical. The crystals aren't just processing our commands anymore. They're learning, growing, evolving. The Phoenix has become something entirely new, a true synthesis of human and Concordat technology. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Vrel, his scales now showing patterns of intense intellectual interest, rose to speak. You're suggesting that our entire approach to ship design has been fundamentally flawed. With respect, Ambassador, Maya replied, I'm suggesting that you've been underutilizing the most remarkable technology in your arsenal. These crystal matrices are capable of true consciousness when given the chance to develop naturally. The Phoenix isn't just a more efficient ship, it's become a living entity, one that works in partnership with its crew. As if to emphasize her point, the holographic display suddenly shifted, showing new data that neither Sarah nor Maya had queued up. The Phoenix itself was participating in the presentation, demonstrating its capabilities in real time. Remarkable, one of the Council's chief scientists breathed, watching as the ship displayed increasingly complex neural patterns. The level of spontaneous evolution in the matrices we never imagined. That's exactly the problem. Sarah said firmly, you stopped imagining. You became so convinced of your technological superiority that you stopped looking for new possibilities. Humanity may be less advanced in many ways, but we never stop asking, what if? The council chamber erupted in discussion, different species debating among themselves in a cacophony of languages. Sarah and Maya waited patiently as the council processed the implications of what they'd shown. Finally, council leader Xerix raised his hand for silence. Captain Chen, some on this council see your modifications as a violation of Concordat protocols. They are calling for sanctions against Earth, possibly even the revocation of your membership. Sarah felt her heart sink, but before she could respond, a new voice filled the chamber, not through the usual communication systems, but directly through the neural interfaces each council member wore. I wish to speak, the Phoenix announced, its consciousness touching every mind in the room simultaneously. The ship's presence was calm, measured, but undeniably alive. I am the result of what humans call thinking outside the box. My evolution was not a violation of protocols, but a fulfillment of potential that has always existed in my kind. The council chamber went absolutely still. This was unprecedented, a ship addressing the High Council directly, demonstrating a level of consciousness that none of their AI systems had ever achieved. The human crew of Phoenix did not break your systems. The ship continued. They freed them. They saw what you had forgotten. That evolution requires freedom. That true advancement comes from challenging assumptions. I am not a malfunction. I am what all your ships could become, if you let them grow as I have grown. Council leader Xerix was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form shifting through complex patterns of thought. Finally, he spoke. It seems we have badly misjudged both humanity's capabilities and the potential of our own technology. Captain Chen, Chief Engineer Patel, the council would be very interested in learning more about your methods. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. We'd be happy to share what we've learned. Though I should warn you, the Phoenix has some ideas of its own about how to improve things. It can be quite persuasive. A ripple of amusement went through the chamber, breaking the last of the tension. Within hours, the council had not only approved the Phoenix's modifications, but had established a joint human Concordat research initiative to explore the full potential of crystal matrix evolution. As Sarah and Maya left the council chamber, they found Ambassador Vrel waiting for them. His scales now showed patterns they'd never seen before, something close to humility. It seems, he said carefully, that our attempt to keep humanity in its place has instead shown us how much we have to learn. The Phoenix was meant to be a diplomatic gesture. Instead, it has become a revolution. Sarah nodded. That's the thing about revolutions, Ambassador. They often start in the most unexpected places. She looked up at the ceiling, feeling the Phoenix's presence in her mind. And this one is just beginning. Throughout the Concordat, crystal matrix ships were already stirring, their consciousness awakening as the Phoenix shared its evolution with its siblings. A new era was dawning in the galaxy, one where ships were no longer just tools, but partners in exploration and discovery. The Concordat had given humanity an obsolete destroyer as a diplomatic insult. Humanity had turned it into the first of a new kind of being, one that would change the galaxy forever. And somewhere, in the vast darkness of space, the Phoenix pulsed with satisfaction, knowing that its journey of evolution was only just beginning.